Charlie?
There he is.
All right. Really hard to get them all up here. Like herding sheep. Welcome to the March 26th work session of the Elizabethtown City Council. And if you'd like, please join me in prayer. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so very, very much for all the blessings that are bestowed on our city every day. We are the most blessed group in the world, and we thank you for all of our police, fire, public service, all the city employees. We ask that you forgive us for our sins, and please help us to forgive those who have sinned against us. And now go with us as we conduct this meeting. In Jesus' name we ask these things. Amen.
Amen.
Do we have any scouts? No? Well, say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're very, very happy tonight to welcome Mr. Jeffries with the water company. Taken our water and just made it better, right?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mayor and City Council and staff. It's a pleasure to come for our annual update. We made this offer last year, and this, I believe, is my second time to come and give you an update for Hardin County Water Dish number 2. I have with me our treasurer, Mo Miller, is in the crowd tonight, and Amber Pike, our accounting manager, who will be helping me with the presentation. So I've brought all my secret weapons for the presentation for tonight. But I will be going over some of our project updates and talking about our leak percentage, going over some of the staffing challenges that we've had at the water district, and then Amber is going to take over and talk a little bit about our self-funded health insurance and then the budget for 2018. And then we'll take any questions that you might have. But starting with a project update from 2017, we had a lot of major projects get completed. This was the West Bryant Road extension, the first extension towards the Louisville Water Company, which we began 9 years ago. So that was our ceremonial first piece of pipe that was put in the ground on West Bryant Road. It started in April of 2008, believe it or not, with a letter of intent with Louisville Water Company, in which we said, hey, we're going to need more water in the future, and we're a willing buyer. They said, we have plenty of water and we're a willing seller, so let's work together. It immediately rolled into a conversion study where Hardin County Water District number 2 in 2011 was able to determine that we should be a chloramine system, and we have an easier time of meeting the stage 2 disinfectant byproduct rules from the EPA if we're a chloramine system. So we did that study in 2011. 2013, once we decided we needed to switch to chloramines, then we did a blending study, about 18 months worth of blending study with Louisville Water Company. That study came back and said that the waters are very compatible. When we're chloramines and they're chloramines, the water is very compatible, and we don't have to do anything special in the distribution system to manage the blending of that water. We started laying pipe on West Bryant Road, finished that little section in 2014. If you see that picture over to the left, a lot of that project was along 434 on the road right away. So dealing with driveways and mailboxes and traffic and school buses. But about half the project was cross country. And you can see the cross country was also kind of a challenge. So the hills and valleys coming into Elizabethtown were quite a challenge. And that silt fence there is not for erosion control, Robert. It was actually a visual aid for the construction workers to know that, hey, 5 feet past this silt fence is an oil pipeline. And the hard and fast rule is thou shalt not get on the oil pipeline during this construction project. And here's a fence to remind you of that. And their inspector was there as much as our inspector was there during construction to make sure that that didn't happen. So this was a very challenging project from a pipe laying standpoint. It did lead to the partnership and the acquisition of the city's water system, which on Halloween of 2014, that transition took place. That helped in the conversion of White Mills and City Springs. So we were able to use one engineer, one method, one set of equipment where we could, and convert those plants concurrently. So November of 2015, White Mills pulled the trigger and converted to chloramines. 2 days later, City Springs converted to chloramines, and the entire system was able to convert in one process. And then the grand finale was May 25th of 2017. So we started taking water at the Miller Pump Station in Colesburg and that's Mr. Carlos Miller over there on the far left of your screen, for whom this pipeline was, or the pump station was named. Mr. Miller was our engineer for probably 25 or 30 years at the Water District, our principal engineer. And this was his last project before he retired. But we began taking water May 25th. About 8% of our water in 2015 was from Louisville Water. That number will grow between then and 2017 and 2021 to about 18%. So when we are meeting our requirement, our contractual requirement of 1 million gallons a day, that'll be about 18% of our demand. So now that the water is flowing through this pipeline, forevermore, as Elizabethtown and Hardin County grows and expands and needs more water, then that more water will come line through Louisville Water up to 10 million gallons per day. So we're happy to report that that project is complete. Another project that we took on last year was the East Dixie Highway relocation. You may recall that this was a cast iron main underneath the southbound lane of Dixie Highway, and every time it would pop, it would shut down 2 hotels, half a dozen restaurants, 3 lanes of traffic, and really be inconvenient for everybody on the south side of town. Our board, in recognizing that, hey, we're a system not just of 40-year-old pipes, but now with the acquisition of E-Town with pipes that might be older than 40 years, we need a rehab program. So our 20-year capital plan includes what the board has approved, $400,000 a year as a line item for that rehab and replacement of water mains that are getting to the end of their life cycle. And so we kind of see it, and this water main may have been just fine, except that when it did break from time to time, it was incredibly inconvenient. So it's not just the age of the pipe, but how often do we have to repair it, and how much inconvenience is there to the public when a pipe does have a repair effort taking place. So this project was the first of those efforts to be completed in 2017. Technology updates, it just wasn't all about laying pipe. The district tried to keep up with the latest and greatest just in business methods and procedures and best practices. We finally got away from punching a time clock, so all of our employees now can clock in on their iPhones as they sit down at a desk. Not at the stop sign down the street, mind you, but when you actually do get to work, you can clock in from your iPhone, and we don't have to manually calculate hours on a timesheet anymore. So we've kind of grown up a little bit in that category. Our accounting software, the Solomon software that we had, kind of reached the end of its being maintained and serviced by the supplier. So we had to switch over to an Intact software that also has the potential of handling the sewer system. So we do sewer billing for the city. We're getting ready to start sewer billing, Charlie, for the unincorporated areas of the county. So this software is set up to handle all these different funds and different revenue streams. Asset management software by Joseph Eve. Last year, for the first time, our balance sheet went over $100 million in assets. So that's a lot of treatment plants, 14 different tanks, a dozen or so pump stations, several sites, 1,000 miles of pipeline. So that is a lot of assets to maintain. All those assets come with a maintenance schedule, a replacement schedule, a depreciation schedule. So this software kind of helps Amber and the accounting department track all those expenses and help us with budgeting and forecasting for expenses as those assets require those needs. And leak detection software, we kind of reached out and tried to take the next level in leak detection. The district always had a positive trend in leak detection, staying just under that 15% limit, which is the state guidelines. If you're under 15%, you're doing what you need to do. If you're above 15%, then you need to be working on that. And then the other part of that phrase is if you're under 10%, you're usually lying about that number. So that was the other part of it. So if you're between 10 and 15, then the whole world kind of recognizes that a water system is where it should be. So with the acquisition of E-Town and the blending of all of those additional 140 so miles, we kind of went from 15 up to 21, which in itself isn't all that bad. That's just 6% over the target. But the PSC, at the same time, the PSC became very sensitive to this number. And so as water companies across the state were petitioning for orders and for deviations or rate increases from the PSC, PSC was making a special case of the leak percentage in all of those requests that came their way. So they've become very sensitive to that number. And for our own merits, we want that number to be back down for 15% too. But it creates a lot of noise when you go to Frankfurt for approval for things, and then they pull out your leak percentage and say, yeah, that's fine, but what are you doing about this? So the way we answered that question was going through this software. So we hired a consultant that came in and mapped about 20 miles. Charlie, right back over where you live, we mapped all that with a consultant. And then we watched how they did that, watched the equipment that they used, and then our board approved that in the budget for 2017. So we were able to buy that equipment and start using it ourselves. So it's based on you hook up the leads to the system, to the distribution system, and send noise into the system, and you listen. And can you hear the refraction of a leak? So a leak that's venting to atmospheric pressure from 100 psi or 80 psi has a very significant sound signature to it. So as we're attached to our to fire hydrants or to valve boxes or to any type of thing that's connected to the system, we can listen for these things. So it's nothing more than just a really high-tech listening device that pinpoints where there is a signature of possible leak. So you can see that we're making headway. We're down to 17% for the year, but more importantly, if you look at the monthly schedule, you can kind of see where the effort started paying off in the back half of the year. So I'm happy to report that even last month, we reported to our board a number that was the lowest, 16.8. So we're continuing to drop that rolling average. So I hope next year to be able to report that we're back safely under that red bar for the PSC's concerns, and as well for our own merits. Staffing challenges. Have you seen all the help wanted signs out around town? Last year, I felt like I was a full-time HR manager. I personally sat in how many interviews? 68 interviews. We hired 16 people that was chasing 15 people going out. So retirements and promotions and spouses that got promoted and relocated. So we heard every reason last year for employee turnover. But the result was, on average, we were 3 employees short per month against the budget. So we ran shorthanded, and even now we're four employees short against the budget. So we have learned in the last 18 months how to run shorthanded. And I think it's good, Mayor. I mean, we have a great economy in Elizabethtown. There's a lot of openings going on. Charlie, we said in a lot of stuff in the Industrial Foundation, a lot of activity for new employers looking at our area. So this is, generally speaking, a good thing. But for employers, it results in a lot of people advertising for positions right in their own front yard, trying to attract employees. So the Water District is also seeing this for probably the first time in my 12 years that we've had to deal with this. Pensions is also, I know, is high on the list for the city. We're all in the CERS. We're all in it together. And so we're also noticing that we're going from 19.18 to 18.05. So it's harder to attract employees and retain and keep good employees. And then it's also getting more expensive to fund the CERS. So we are very, very sensitive to this. And we did build this into the budget. We got the information that it could be 28.05. That did go into the budget that Amber is getting ready to present starting in July. And at this point, I'll ask Amber to come forward and take over the self-funded insurance topic.
Down. Okay. Hello, Mayor, council members, and staff. Thank you for having us this afternoon. Self-funded insurance, one of the big major endeavors that the district undertook last year. As we all know, healthcare costs continue to rise. It's one of the fastest growing costs that we have. So we, over the last several years, have really focused our attention on what we could make changes and improvements on. And healthcare was definitely one of those areas. So over about the last 5 years, we have made as many changes as we thought feasible as far as cost analysis was concerned. You can see the number of carriers that we've changed to. We've analyzed coverages, renewal processes, bidding, and stayed in the private market so that we could and just tweaked our way around so that we could see what we could do to control some of those costs. But we were still above national average. You can see the blue boxes there are the national average, which obviously are continuing to rise. After we moved away and started to make some of our changes in 2012, you can see the dramatic drop. And we started to inch closer to that national average number. But even with all the changes and all of the improvements that we were making, we were still just coming up a little short. So by the end of 2016, our board decided to go with a partially self-funded insurance healthcare plan. And it's partially self-funded because there is one vendor on here, Nationwide, one of our external network providers, and they provide what's called stopgap insurance. And that is kind of a catastrophic policy in case we have some of those unforeseen illnesses or claims that are above the usual and customary. So we do have protection there, but otherwise, we pay claims straight from the district to the provider through our third-party administrator, NAA, which is on the far right there. So we work with this external network of providers, which includes Kroger for our pharmaceutical benefits. Nationwide does the stopgap policy. The FI Group and HST, those are the contract negotiators, but the FI Group would be on the provider side and HST is on the facility side. And we had the help of our local agent, Tom Major, to kind of keep all of that together. But NAA, our third-party administrator, they work with the external network and also the internal network, which is made up of already trained existing district employees. So minimum for an internal network for self-funded insurance is going to be a privacy officer and a security officer. And the privacy officer is the HR company employee liaison, the claim support in the in-house side of that. Excuse me. Security officer is going to analyze the contracts, work with those external network providers to be sure that the pricing is correct and the analysis comes out the way that it was expected.
What is your all stopgap limit?
It's 25 last year. It was 25 last year. We raised it to 35 this year. 35,000 per individual, up to 35,000. We pay all the claims. 35 and above, then we get reimbursement from our stopgap. And so what did we learn from this experiment last year? Well, we learned a couple of things. One, cash flow is a little bit more difficult to manage because you've got claims that come in one month that are this big and claims that come in another month that are that big. So you can see how we were pretty well flat coming into the year, and then it just goes all the way over. But at the end of the year, we were at the red dot, we're flat against 2016. We maintained the same coverages, and actually we've increased our coverages in some aspects because we have implemented a couple of different things. One thing is the wellness program, which kind of works in a couple of different ways. This helps us to keep our costs down because we're helping promote wellness within our employee base. Employees are more aware of their health conditions that they may or may not have known about. The healthier workforce is a lower cost healthcare plan. There are 5 biometrics that our employees are tested on, and it's a voluntary program, but we do incentivize them to do that. So they can control their own costs with either their deductibles or their premiums. Let me go back once. We also implemented this year a tier 1 provider part of this program. And what we did was, this was another measure to control cost, was we negotiated independent contracts with some of the local providers. We did some analysis and we saw that some of the providers for the same billing codes were all over the place as far as charges were concerned. So we chose those providers that had the lower cost, and we have negotiated independent contracts with those providers. So we're able to incentivize our employees to go there with less deductible or copay and still experience cost savings.
Are you still able to do that? Park Memorial only probably 90% or 95% of the services now.
We have contracted with several smaller, usually new to town businesses are usually most eager, but yes, we've contracted with different providers in most every area of medical with imaging and all those things.
It is. We experience that same thing here in the city with the cost of an MRI or an X-ray.
Right. Yeah, and it's a difficult thing that we all run into.
Yeah.
But we have, and it took the analysis to see where we could find those things we could tweak. So bringing us up to the 2018 budget. One thing that we did budget was lower healthcare costs in 2018. We did increase cost for CERS, as we are all experiencing. A couple of things to point out. This is a snapshot of our overall budget, and there are lots of numbers that go into making these up. So if you've got any details that you'd like to see, we can make those available to you. But we did have, it's a residual growth in the county, not huge by any means, but it's a steady, constant growth. We have some expenses that are changing a little bit this year. If you notice that 2016, we had 0 in the way of purchased water. And in 2018, we'll be up to 433,000. And that, of course, is a result of the Louisville water connection. So that's one thing to notice. And then of interest to the city would be the line where Freeman Lake shows 0 in the 2018 category, which was a result of we relinquished the lease at Fort Knox this past fall. So a little bit down up in the expenses, and mainly that can be attributed to the purchase water.
Question.
Sure.
The purchase water, is that a contracted obligation or because of low rainfall?
It is a contractual obligation. We have an obligation up until 2021 on an increasing level to take water from Louisville and up to that point. So we do have extra capacity in the system. JJ can answer that question a little bit better than I can, but yeah, that is a contractual purchase as of right now.
And that is only with Louisville?
Right.
Okay.
Right. All right, and I will turn it back over to JJ to finish us up.
Louisville grows to 1 million gallons a day contractual obligation by 2021. They're obligated to make available 5 million gallons a day. So if we needed a whole lot more water, if something comes to town or something comes to Glendale, capacity is there. But we're just obligated for 1 MGD at this time.
How does it affect the rating? Affect the water rate increase?
That's an excellent question. So in other news, we'll talk about some other things, and I'll get to that question too. But we were back into the circuit of best tasting water competitions last year. And I'm very happy to report that last year there's 2 best tasting water competitions in the state of Kentucky that are reputable. One of them is Kentucky Rural Water, one of them is AWWA. So I'm happy to report that we came in 1st place in AWWA, 2nd place in Kentucky Rural Water. Ordinarily, I wouldn't even mention 2nd place because we only like to brag about our 1st place trophies. We do have 6 1st place titles that we like to brag about. But what was significant about last year in Kentucky Rural Water and AWWA is this is as a chloramine system. So all of our previous titles was as free chlorine. So Hardin County Water, regardless of how we disinfect it, if it's free chlorine or if it's chloramines, it's still the best tasting water in the state of Kentucky. So we're happy to announce that. Also in the area of compliance, AWAP awards at both treatment plants at City Springs and at White Mills. This is one of the highest honors that the Division of Water will recognize a water company with, is their level of compliance and how far above and beyond the regulations they go. So we've gotten that award ever since they started the program in 2008. I can also report that we are laying sewer line in Glendale. So DD, we need to talk about a formal arrangement between our respective attorneys, but we're happy to be able to be laying pipe. So about 12 months worth of construction and 2 months worth of cleanup. So this time next year, we could be talking about our first county customers receiving sewer service from this system. We did purchase the property at 315 Ring Road a couple of years ago, and last month our board did hire an architect firm, Branstetter Carroll. I believe the city has used Branstetter Carroll on some projects. Sound familiar? Maybe the water park up there? Yeah. So they will be helping us with the design of our new customer service center and base of operations that will be right across the street at the old Remington building. And that design work is officially underway right now. Future price increases. All right. So Mr. Bennett, will we have to raise our prices in the future? The answer is always yes, right? Prices always go up. I'm happy to say that not very often in county water does prices go up. Our last price increase for the county at large was 2007, when we went from 460 per thousand gallons to 515, and that's our current rate, 515 per thousand gallons. Now the city of E-Town residents did see an adjustment, and that last adjustment occurred last July. So at last July, the original city customers came up and matched what the rest of the county was. So we have 28,000 customers currently, all paying the same rate now, which is $18.50 for a minimum bill and $5.15 per thousand after that. So this rate in the state of Kentucky is, the average in Kentucky is 25% higher than that. So of 135 water companies in the state that are under PSD jurisdiction, we are ranked 32nd from the bottom as far as low prices. So there's 132 companies ahead of us on price. We feel like there's wage pressure right around the corner, and it's directly related to Louisville. It's absolutely directly related. We can produce water much more economical than what we can buy it in Colesburg and then pump it up the hill. And not only do you have the purchase price of $2.30 per thousand, then 15 cents per thousand to pump it up to the Elizabethtown Plateau. So we can produce water at City Springs and White Mills much cheaper than that. Problem is that we're at capacity in those facilities. And so as that volume becomes from 8% to 18%, our cost of production will grow proportionately. So our board is looking very closely at our cost and the timing of when that will happen. It won't be in 2018. We kind of feel like it will match up with the contract with Louisville around 2020 or 2021 is when we'll see that price increase. So that's the end of my formal comments. I'll be happy to answer any other questions that you might have.
Where's the $3 million profit?
$3 million profit. Actually, we're very lucky that we can finance all of our own projects now. We haven't had to borrow money since the original application for the Louisville Water Connection. So, and the district actually had to put in $4.5 million for that project. For $5 million worth of financing from the federal government, we had to come up with $4.5 million of local funds. Local funds comes from the spread. So the depreciation fund, and actually you can go back up. Depreciation is not called out separately, but depreciation is the overwhelming majority of this admin. The admin department is not really $4.3 million big this year. There's probably $3 million worth of depreciation. Depreciation is a fund by which when East Dixie Main needs to be replaced and you need $400,000 to do it, it comes from the depreciation fund.
Y'all used to invest some free money from the city, well, too.
But yeah, but to your point, you can see in Amber's chart the reduction going on in NOI 3.9, 3.5, 3.0. That's a pretty serious reduction. You go from 4 down to 3 in a 2-year time period. So we see that we'll have to balance that equation eventually. Yes, sir.
How much water is leaking prior before the new software versus after the new software? You might have said that, but.
Yeah, I can scroll back up. So 2015 was the first full year of the district and E-Town merged into one distribution system, and so 21%. So if you think about our an average daily demand of 8 million, so 20% of that is a little less, 1.8,
In all
1.5.
honesty, our system, how much did it, because of the age of some of the lines,
Mhm.
did it drive that number up?
Yeah, and it's still not a fair comparison, Mr. Fulkerson, because the city didn't charge itself for the 20-some sites where the city used water,
Right.
including Carroll Soccer Complex, where
Right.
irrigation was no charge. So that's buried in that number. So it's not necessarily all leaking. It's more or less the state's definition of non-revenue water that you
Okay.
didn't account
I
for.
got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
Right. So
We realize some
so
of our projects
we've-
a lot older.
right. It's never been as bad as what the graph kind of intends. Good question. What else?
I know. I'm sure we still are.
Well, we appreciate the opportunity to come give the city an update, and we look forward to again next year.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much, JJ. Appreciate it. Thank you all very much. So,
Mo, will you share some of your investment strategies with Jeff back there? You're doing well. Okay. That's our issue, isn't it?
Trade like Mo.
There you go.
how did you all happen to come without Mr. Bell?
Not mine.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
to hear
Thank
from
you.
you. Come on down, Ed.
I'm on base.
I just wanted to update the council on a project that's going to take place out at American Legion Park. It's called the Born Learning Trail. This is a United Way program. So the city is partnering with Central Kentucky United Way, the city school system, the Lincoln Trail District Health Department, and Brighter Futures Counseling. It is a trail that is designed for preschool kids. It's only 100, 150 feet in length, so it's very short. There's 10 stations at it. At each station, there's it's paved. There's drawings on the pavement, and there's a sign, and it encourages kids to, there might be musical notes at one of the stations. So it says, sing a song about nature. And the next station, it may be something about colors. So it encourages them to look around and see different colors around them of trees blooming or flowers or whatever. And the next station may be talking about animals. So you talk about animals that you might see in the park and stuff. So there's no cost to the city for this project. Like I said, it's a partnership with those groups. The work should begin sometime in April with the conclusion in May. Like I said, it's not very long. It's just a little loop. It's going to be up around tennis courts in the Funtopia area. So we've got public parking. It's for the city schools, it's close to Panther Academy, so they can walk those kids up there and stuff. So like I said, just wanted to make you all aware we've got something going on. If you see a little construction activity out there in the next 30 days or so, and we'll keep you posted when it's all done.
Who will maintain?
The perfect partner with the water park and Funtopia.
Who's responsible for maintaining?
Who do you think?
Well, but-
Be upfront about it, I guess.
I mean, the city's not going to have to keep up the artwork that's done, but I mean, to be honest with you, Marty, once it's installed, there's not much.
Seth
to
won't have to go repaint raw things.
No, that's not. We'll have some other talented folks doing those kind of things.
Thanks, Ed. Okay, you guys have anything else?
Yeah, I've got a question for Chief Land, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Chief Land, warm months are coming up, and I've had fielded some complaints about the panhandlers, and just wanted you to address the challenges dealing with the panhandlers around the mall area, and so the folks, the media can report on that and let them know that, you know, we're aware we passed an ordinance and we're fully aware they're out there, but the challenges we have with getting rid of the panhandlers in that area.
Sure. You know, we receive several calls a month about this. A lot of them, people more or less using us to harass the folks that were out there. We get the primary call is, you know, this person's out here, they need some kind of help. You all need to help them. The challenge is, as you know, the Supreme Court about 3 years ago struck down most city ordinances against panhandling, basically saying it's a Second Amendment right. And as long as they are on the sidewalks or on the right of way, they're not in violation of any law, holding their signs, requesting for funding from folks, or which I know most of them don't ask for money. They all ask for food or they need a job. But they're there because they're making money doing it. They're not there because they're not making money. You know, that's one of the issues, is that people do stop and give. And that's why they go out there, because day after day they're making money doing this. So they're going to continue to do it as long as people are providing them with funds to stand out there. We are seeing a little bit of an increase. There is a state law that does allow us to cite them for stepping into the roadway. If they do step into the roadway to collect funds, there is a KRS we use to cite them. And we have, in the last couple of months, we've cited several for doing so. But, you know, that's one of those things where we have to see it in order to act on it. We can go up there and warn them all day long, but we can't do anything about it until we see them physically do it. So, I mean, those are the real challenges, is that they're allowed to stand on the side of the road and do that. They just have to step in the roadway for us to be able to act on it. Most of them that we do make contact with, we provide them with resources. They don't want the resources. They don't want food. They want the money that they're getting for standing out there. You know, if we could, and perhaps we could make a push on social media to let folks know, hey, please don't donate to them. Donate to some of the other charities, even Homeless Intervention Services, the Homeless Shelter in Radcliffe, United Way. There's lots of charities out there that will help these folks if they really need the help. And, you know, maybe that's something we need to start pushing more out to get the word out there. Hey, please don't donate to these folks. Lexington, and that's kind of their new ordinance is one that we're watching to see how it works out. But one of the things that they have is at each intersection, they specify these specific intersections in the ordinance. These are problem intersections. They have signs posted that say, please don't donate. Please donate to this. And there's a website that you can go to donate for, where they directly use those monies to help homeless folks that are out there panhandling.
Is it okay for them to bring their family, and their family and kids are sitting in the grass right there while the other person?
We can do about that.
We can't do anything about
But
that.
they're not supposed to be in the medians, correct?
Correct. They can stand on the right of way and on the sidewalks, which most of the locations where we see them, there is a sidewalk that they're standing on.
Well, like at Kroger's, there's a divider. So they can stand on that. That's where their stand is, right there in front of Kroger's at,
And they were there, they were there today in the.
Yes.
I haven't seen them in the divider before. Usually they're on Bob Evans' side right there at the
Oh,
sidewalk.
no,
Usually that's where I
Right
see
They were
in
them.
in
the middle.
They were in the median today. And the fellow that was there today, I mean, he was waving and carrying on and
Yeah, same
dancing,
one.
and I mean,
Sure, he's making more money than you are.
Yeah.
but
She
I
may
can
be
see
right on
where
that.
it could be a big distraction to a driver as well.
Sure.
Because, you know, it catches their attention there in the median. And,
Sure, he's like one of those folks that are out there with the mattress store signs or the
Yeah.
other stores that have the folks
So
out there.
you all would
Yeah.
certainly, I mean, if you went by there, you would just say, get to the sidewalk, you would just tell
Yes.
them to go to the sidewalk.
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
And then after you left, he'd come back to the meeting.
good possibility, yes.
Given the fact that they're not on, I mean, that is not a city street, could the proprietor of, say, Kroger or whatever prohibit them from doing it? I'm just curious.
And probably Ed would be better to speak about that than me, but there are certain areas that are private property and there are certain areas that are not. I know I use the I think on our maps, it's called Starlight Entrance or something like that, right there next to Hardee's, that area right there. That is private property because we've actually, when we were assisting with collections several years ago, the mall called us and said, hey, we don't want you on our property out there collecting. So we moved on. So yes, there are certain areas that are private property. If the business manager, owner, representative calls us and says, hey, we don't want these people on our property, which Walmart does from time to time, we can address that absolutely and make them move.
Do we have to have this in a case-by-case basis where the property owners call, or could we just get a letter from the property owners to the city stating anytime these folks are on our private property, the police have the legal right to come and get them off for us because they're trespassing?
I don't see why we couldn't do that because we do. It's similar for a trespass. If you go to Walmart and Walmart says we don't want you here anymore, we can't arrest you for that. But if you've been trespassed from the property, then we can charge you criminally for being on the property. So I guess it could be similar to that. But most of the businesses, they don't call about it.
Should we contact those businesses and say, hey, you know, if we get a letter from you guys, a blanket statement that says we don't allow trespassing by panhandlers, that way the business owners don't have to call you every time and you can just take care of it.
Sure. But most of them that we deal with are corporations where, you know, they don't, yes, they don't want to do it.
Who did you say was experimenting with the signage? Was that
Lexington, yes, sir, Fayette County.
Jim, that might be something that you guys could follow up on and see if there's success, you know, what kind of success they have there, because I kind of like that idea.
It's only been
At
in
least
place for about
try it.
5 months, I think. I haven't heard any waves so far.
And Don, there's more signs you can have printed up.
Absolutely.
We love
And
signs.
installed.
Okay.
Anything else?
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
They were Steak and Shake today too.
Okay, we
Yeah, they're
through?
always right there, coming out of the Walmart area.
You guys ready?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I need a motion to close the meeting pursuant to KRS 61.810.
I'll make that motion.
To A, I gotta
You
read.
gotta open it first.
What?
And close.
Oh my gosh, let's start all over. Just disregard that. Okay. I'd like to call to order this special meeting of the Elizabethtown City Council. And now I would like a motion to close the meeting pursuant to KRS 61.810.
So
To A, conduct deliberation on future acquisition or sale of real property by the city. And B, to discuss the general nature of existing and possible litigation by the city.
yes, ma'am, I'll make that motion.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Great.
Shall
Let's.
Let's.
I have an apple.
I feel like Larry Ashland, it's up to you.
Hey, that's why I'm like. Appreciate it.